Howdy everyone! For today's Jolly Lark, we're going to have another basic basing video where we're going to make some cracked, dry, arid desert bases. To start with, you're going to grab your base and give it a nice coat of dark brown. It can be any dark brown that suits your fancy, but something that's darker than the crackle paint that you're using. In this case, we're using the Citadel Agrellan Earth, which is just a nice medium light kind of brown color. I like to use a brush that's as big as possible that I can still fit inside the pot. You know, something that's kind of flat and wide is good. You're really going to blob that on. Look at those big blobs on top of the base there. And unlike other painting where you're going for nice thin coats, when you're using a crackle paint, you really want kind of a pretty good thick coat. You can see it. This is a nice fat layer on top of the base. How much crackle you get will also depend on how thick the paint is at any given point. The thicker the paint is, the bigger sections of cracked earth that you'll get, and the thinner it is, the finer the cracks will be. So if you have a look you're going for, you can manipulate it a little bit like that. So just going to take that paint out to the edges. Inevitably, you'll get some on the edge of the base, no problem. I usually just use my fingers. I use my fingers a lot while I'm painting, but just wipe that off the sides of the paint so it's not thick enough to get that crackle effect at all, because you don't want those hard crackles on the edge of your base. So with that, I'm going to set it down and let this dry. That number in the upper right is correct. I've sped up the footage to 30,000 times actual speed so that we can watch the crackle effect dry over the course of about 30 seconds in what was actually about 2 hours. Because you're putting on the paint pretty thick, it does take a little while to dry. But you can kind of see as it dries here, you can tell when it's dry, when all the paint has kind of an even matte finish. And so once it's fully dry, you're then ready for the next step. Honestly, I think this looks pretty good with just the crackle paint over the dark brown base. You can see that dark brown through the cracks, which is why you want to make sure to paint the base whatever color you want to see in the cracks first, because otherwise you're going to have black in the cracks or you're going to have red in the cracks or whatever. A really, really light dry brush of kind of an ivory, a bone white. I think it looks good. It makes some of the larger cracks look a little bit like chunks of rock. It highlights the edges of the cracks just a little bit, and it just gives a little bit more pop to the texture. My focus is always on painting armies more so than individual miniatures, and I think that adding a little bit of a highlight layer to the cracks makes the miniatures bases stand out a little bit more at the tabletop army level when you're looking at it from 3 or 4 feet away, that's usually what I'm going for, is a army-wide effect for all of my painting. Once you're done with that, just clean up the edges of the base a little bit with your chosen color. I'm using the Pro Acryl Light Umber. The Citadel Steel Legion Drab is also very similar in color to the Agrellan Earth and makes a good base edge color. With the edge of the base painted, you could stop now. I think that's basically a cool looking desert base. I'm going to grab some tufts and shrubs here. These are mostly from Gamer Grass, who I like a lot. I also really like the Tajima one, although I don't make tufts that are quite this large. And this could be whatever you want. You could have these, just use a dried small yellow. You can vary it up and put different colors. Really whatever suits your fancy when it comes to the tufts. Adding some green makes it a little bit more of a living desert look. Whereas if you're just adding all yellows and browns, you'll end up with a little bit more of a parched, dead desert look, which can be cool for stuff like Tomb Kings or Undead and stuff like that. But I think the tufts are a nice way just to add a little variety to your bases. A little pair of nice precision tweezers here are good for fine detail work. I usually like to apply the tufts with those. And just kind of give them a little poke in the middle of the tufts to keep them down. So yeah, there you go. Parched desert bases, super quick and easy. These are a really neat effect that is attention grabbing on the table and not that hard at all to do. So as always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all the new subscribers recently. And if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. You can see how I've used this effect here on a unit of the Legionnaires for the Old Dominion Conquest miniatures. I think it's a neat effect. I think it goes well with the ancient armor. Video on that coming up soon. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time for another Jolly Lark.